The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests, have not been evaluated by the FDA, and are in no way attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of the show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed, qualified healthcare practitioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom, and this is a Supplement Super Sleuth.
That'll be me, and the Herbal Storyteller.
And that definitely would be me. And together, we're going to take a peek behind the curtain of the natural products industry.
We'll be sharing naturals in the news, dispelling lots of myths, interviewing key players in the industry, and highlighting our favorite herbs and supplements.
So with that, let's pull back that curtain and see what's there.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, good morning, Nan. How are you?
I'm really good. Yeah. So here we are for our fourth episode, and pretty excited about today. Really excited about today.
Great
but
guest.
We'll start. Yeah. We'll start off with our regular naturals in the news. I saw this headline, and I couldn't stop laughing. But so it goes like this: scientists found a healthier way to cook broccoli, but there's a catch. This is from Science Alert. Right? January 14th, 2022. So it's very recent. Researchers have discovered that damaging broccoli, so you have to beat it up via repetitive chopping. So take all your aggression out on it, and allowing the plant material to sit before cooking was able to elevate levels of sulforaphane, a compound associated with benefits ranging from blood sugar regulation to normal cell activity. So I had a good laugh. I don't know what you think about that.
I don't know. I'm reminded of the first George W. Bush president and how much he hated broccoli. So I'm thinking, the president orders a set of Ginsu knives and chop on the broccoli to make it much more nutritive and maybe palatable to him, because after all, once you've killed it yourself, it makes it a lot more, even as a vegetable.
I know, it's so funny. So, all right. So you're struggling with whatever is going on in your life. Just go beat some broccoli up and you'll get more out of it.
Beat some broccoli up, then steam it, or, pan fry it. Do whatever you want to do, because after you've beat it up like that, nothing else is going to hurt it.
Okay. Next headline is, it's a study on this, product called Murdy Pro. It's a bilberry extract, and it shows positive effects for eye fatigue. It was published in Whole Foods magazine, June 8th, 2021, using data collected during a 6-week placebo-controlled randomized study conducted in parallel. Researchers have associated supplementation with a proprietary bilberry extract with a decrease in the accommodative response induced by oxidative stress post-video display terminal use, which is kind of a long way of saying sitting in front of your computer or a screen, any screen, right? So what do you think about that, Tom?
Well, I know that the company that both of us used to work for, had come out a long time ago with a product that was made for people who were gamers, who were spending hours and hours and hours in front of the video tube. And it's a real, especially now with the pandemic and everybody being shut in and everything, I think it's an absolutely wonderful study to have. And to know, we already understood in an industry that bilberry was great for night vision, because they used it during World War II for their night fighter pilots to enhance their vision. So that was, that's a great thing for bilberry right there. It's a great plug for bilberry. But now to go even further and to show that it has that, what it's doing is protecting us from that blue screen, right? It's helping our eyes not to respond and be exhausted by staring at a blue screen all the time.
Exactly. And it's so true. My mom used to call me Eagle Eye, and obviously I don't have those anymore because I'm wearing these, but I have, these have like a blue color in the glasses to try and protect me. But I notice some days when I'm in front of this computer too long, working on client programs or emails or, writing a blog or something like that, I definitely feel my eyes just get so tired. And it is a boon. It is such a help. I notice a huge difference after taking bilberry. But the trick is you have to just keep taking it. So it has to
Yeah.
be a part of your supplementation, if you will. But I really find it, I love that World War II pilot quip or quote. Actually, that should be on Jeopardy, don't you think?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Who would know that except for Tom to
Now, now we have like the video game with the like, oh no, you crashed because you forgot to take your bilberry.
It's so cool. Okay, next headline is saffron extract may help reduce symptoms of perimenopause, says recent study. And this was published in Nutritional Outlook June 14th, 2021. The results of a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial, the ones that we really like, have linked supplementation with proprietary saffron extract with an improvement of symptoms including anxiety, depression, and fatigue in a group of women experiencing perimenopause. So, saffron is an incredible plant. It's been around forever. It is one of the most expensive, um, what we would call spice herb. I mean, we have herbs that are alteratives and we use them more medicinally, but saffron is something you can just add as a spice to your food and it still has a profound effect. Um, so there are now more recent studies about the kind of the support for women's health, especially around libido and the change going from menstruation to non-menstruating, which can, for some women, is a breeze, and for some women, it's absolute torture. So saffron can be a helpful support, and it's beautiful, and you can eat it, so, and it's delicious.
It's
There's
absolutely great in rice.
yeah,
I mean, saffron and
it
rice
is
is like a and
marriage.
all over India, when they make beautiful milk sweets, for instance, they love their sweets. They love to color it with saffron. It makes it such a beautiful color. And I know you mentioned to me that they're starting to grow it in the
Oh
United
yeah,
States, right?
yes, they are. So I would, like I normally do. I'm a readaholic here. There's this really cool magazine called Eating Well, and I like it. It's kind of a new thing for me, and it right in the back there's a huge article about saffron, um, and it's kind of the rise of American saffron. It's the world's most expensive spice and is almost exclusively grown in Iran, Spain, India, and Afghanistan. So why are fields of it blossoming in this Vermont farm just before the snow falls? So fascinating that if saffron, one of the reasons why it's so expensive is we have to import it. And we don't grow it. We haven't for I don't know how long. We haven't grown it here in the United States for decades, if not centuries. And in Vermont, they're raising saffron. This is kind of a new thing. They're raising saffron for American saffron. So I love that. And so there are some really interesting people involved in this new movement of American saffron growing. Via her University of Vermont program, Margaret Skimmer supports American saffron farmers like Odell Zaka and Jet Mondi Abramson. So here they are. If you're zooming this, you can kind of see them. And they have these, they're beautiful. What's so difficult about saffron is everything has to be done by hand. So the part that's used in the plant is the stamen, which is inside of the actual flower itself. And so you have to literally, you can't do this by machine. You have to pick it out by hand. So that's one of the reasons why it's so expensive is because, everything is done by hand. You have to pick it by hand. It's back-breaking work. You're bent over in the fields.
Yep, it comes from the crocus flower, and
Yeah.
crocuses are little tiny bulbs. They're some of the first bulbs that will come up in the spring, poke their way through the snow, literally, to do their thing. But they don't get much more than about 6 inches tall. So if you can imagine going down and picking the little blossom off of a crocus flower, and it's not easy work. So
Yeah.
you're definitely going to charge a lot of money for it.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's our naturals in the news, and we'll be moving on to Naturals in the Know. So let me play our musical interlude.
There we go.
So we're really excited about our special guest today, and Tom's going to introduce Autumn because they're very dear friends from long time coming.
So, I'm sure that, many of you out there have had second thoughts about, the type of sunscreen and body care products that you use, especially if you love the ocean, our Mother Ocean, like Nancy and I do. And when you looked at the labels of a few products, you might have been able to find something that said reef-safe. So you cross your fingers, you trust it, and you hope for the best. Now, if you check further, you might have ended up being a little bit disappointed. That's why we're so pleased to have our guest today. Her name is Autumn Blum, and she is the originator, she's the founder, she's the chief flag bearer of a growing army of advocates for her truly reef-safe and stream and shoreline safe line of body care products. Appropriately called Stream to Sea. Now, Autumn is first and foremost an ocean advocate. She's a PADI diver, PADI instructor, and a shark diver. And not only that, if that isn't enough, she's also an amazing cosmetic chemist, which is where she has her whole background. She's a very successful entrepreneur. She's an Olympic caliber skeet shooter, and near and dear to our hearts, she's an animal lover. She's a big-time animal lover. So to give you an idea of how determined and powerful this young woman is, at 23 years old, she started a natural skincare company. And she was always underfunded and with sheer willpower and determination, along with some very skilled bootstrapping. I can remember those days, Autumn, I'm telling you, in that little tiny booth at all of the shows. She eventually grew the distribution of her company to include millions of dollars in sales through more than 3,000 retail outlets in the U.S. and abroad. And so then in 2009, she sold those two lines, which were Organic South and Theraneem, to a publicly traded company. And then leading up to and during that time, she also founded an Ayurvedic herbal products line and established a wonderful relationship with some genuine organic growers in India and teachers of Ayurvedic herbal knowledge and wisdom. And from there, we're going to let Autumn tell us what an amazing journey she's had. And I know it's far from over. So please welcome Autumn.
Welcome.
We are genuinely honored to have you on our brand new show.
Would
you like to fill in what I might have missed and carry on from there?
I hope that that's recorded, because anytime I feel bad about myself, I'm just listening to my good friend Tom talk about that. Thank you, Tom. That was amazing. But, the one thing that I would fill in there is I don't sleep well, right? Or I sleep brilliantly, but I don't rest well. I don't like to just sit there being bored. But I have amazing friends that have helped every bit of that journey. So people say some of these things that I've done, I'm like, you don't do it without a village. And I am so grateful. It's so wonderful to see you, my dear old friend from my village, and Nancy, good to see you as well. Thank you for having me here today.
Oh, Autumn,
we were
such a pleasure.
We were part of the hugging village.
Yes.
We're the hug, are we?
We're thrilled.
I love.
I have that sense of awe about you and what you've done, and at the same time, you're just like so approachable and so friendly, and you really are like the most incredible spirit. So I'm so thrilled you're here, Autumn, and I have so much respect for you. So let's start our little conversation, because I know our listeners are going to be wildly curious about you and what you're doing to help protect people's skin, but at the same time protect the environment at the same time, finding that razor's edge balance that we all are looking for. You put neem and neem oil on the market in the U.S. almost 20 years ago, or I think it's about 20. It might be more. Yeah. I know you're about, how old were you? Maybe 12. And I definitely know that you were young, and it's so impressive. What inspired you? I think I remember a conversation about a pet, but I'd love you to tell that story about your puppy. So,
Yeah, thanks. So I had a little dog named Jenkins, and this little guy was the sweetest little spirit. He was a rescue, and his skin was beet red. He had been adopted and taken back to the shelter 3 times before we found him. And at that point, I was playing with neem oil. I was playing with some other botanicals, and I was pretty fresh out of college, right? I was a year out and learning botanical formulations, learning how to make shampoos and conditioners and lotions. And here I've got this smelly, stinky little dog with this beautiful face and beautiful smile that the kindest thing the vet told me to do was put him down. And I'm like, well, I've heard this neem oil is pretty darn good. Let's just smear it all over this little dog. So now I've got a stinky neem dog. Neem smells like burnt garlic. And 3 days later, that little guy was running around galloping, and his skin was no longer beet red. It was a light pink. And that was 3 days. And this guy was 10 years old. He had been subjected to all kinds of hormone treatments and antibiotics and all these therapies. I changed his food. So he was allergic to some of the typicals, corn and wheat. So I put him on a really good food. I coated his skin with neem oil, and I'm like, okay, this stuff is amazing. I went to my boss and I said, hey, look at this. Look at what happened here. We need to do something with this. And my boss was like, well, it's expensive. It smells bad. Nobody knows what it is. No, I'm not going to do anything with that. Well, crap. What do I do?
Yeah.
So for Amazon and motherearth.com and all of those back then, I built a little retail website in my spare time, and I started selling neem oil on the internet. Fast forward a couple months, I got a call from Whole Foods asking if I could supply them. Like, yeah, sure, why not? How do you guys pay, by the way? Credit card, prepay? How's
Exactly.
that's
Net
amazing.
500.
Yeah, exactly, that 500. So that was the start.
Amazing, truly amazing. And I know you make it sound so easy, but you really worked hard, and you, right, like you said, you don't rest well. So I'm imagining very long days added on to your already long, professional days. You're adding on this whole other job, which is not an easy thing to do. So I can give you many kudos for that.
Well,
Yeah.
and the crazy thing is now I know being like the herbal storyteller guy, that dude. I know that neem is an Ayurvedic, definitely an Ayurvedic herb, and it was called the medicine chest for most villages because it had so many different properties. So I'm just wondering, because I know while you were doing that, as you were segueing through so many different parts of your life, you ended up starting a really beautiful little Ayurvedic herb company for a while, and you had a teacher, Dr. Fudke, I think was his name, yes,
Okay, I've
who
met
was
him.
your teacher in India, and you connected up with just a fabulous organic growing operation there. How did you go about going there? How did you end up going there, and then from there to what you do now, which is like really protecting the ocean?
Yeah.
Well, neem is an Ayurvedic herb, as you mentioned. And as I grew, it wasn't just buying pails of neem oil. I started buying drums and then multiple drums. And next thing you know, I need half a container. And what I learned early on is one supplier, the neem oil smelled beautiful. Well, as beautiful as neem oil could smell.
Exactly.
Right? I was going to say,
Woo!
boy, this is really good
Maybe
garlic
it was
today.
really good. I should cook with this. No, don't. It's an Ayurvedic. Don't cook with it.
Right.
But other neem oil would smell kind of like turpentine.
Yeah.
and and they would tell you that it was all organic cold pressed, but sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. So I started traveling to India. Before that, I met Garish, who was one of Dr. Fadke's students as well.
Yeah.
I met him at the trade shows, and he had supercritical neem extract,
Right.
and he had these little gel capsules, and he was pitching it out, kind of same as me. We were both pretty young at that point, and he was telling me about the quality, and I reached over, I grabbed it, and I said, "Can I have it?" He's like, "Yeah, sure," and I bit it. And of course, he's like, "Don't do that." The absolute bitter. And I'm like, "Yeah, that tastes like neem. That's pretty good stuff."
Yeah.
We became friends. And really, he introduced me to all of the other beautiful plants that are in that Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia, and that's really where studying started. I didn't know anything about it until I knew I needed to go.
That's
Yep.
tremendous. Yeah, it's a different world over there. And fun, like really interesting, completely different culture. And but yeah, the farms, they have biodynamic organic farms there and beautiful plants, really. and they've protected their natural herbal traditions in a way that maybe we haven't so much here in the West, but
Yeah.
it's tremendous, isn't it? Wow, so
I
great.
didn't know the biodynamic until I went there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so when you got to the point where you sold, you decided, okay, I'm going to sell this line because it's going to grind me up and I'm going to be fertilizer for neem. Uh, what did you do?
I was flying back from India, actually, and I had a manufacturing facility. So, sometime during that previous 12 years, I decided I needed to manufacture my own products because, again, I don't rest very well. And I'm also a little OCD with the quality control, and I have trust issues. So,
Don't blame you.
another conversation. But I realized that in order to control the quality the way that I wanted to, I needed to manufacture in house.
Hmm.
So I built the facility. I had a beautiful team. I'm flying to India for one of my amazing trips over there. And as I'm flying back, we had a workers' comp claim. I had never had a workers' comp claim, and it was for something that I'd written this kid up 3 times before for doing, and he hurt himself. And thank God it wasn't horrific, but it's the first one that I ever had, and it wrecked my heart. And we hadn't backed up the computer systems, and we had a systemic crash, and it was just like one after the other. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. And a gentleman from Nutraceutical that I've been corresponding with sent me a message and said, hey, when should we talk about possible acquisition? Like tomorrow?
Have you got 5 minutes?
Right. I'm ready. It was time. It had been 12 years and it was time. And it was also still growing to the point where I felt like I needed more skill than what I had to give it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
Why?
a great job with us. He actually beat me to my office. That guy was sitting there waiting for me when I came back from the airport. And so that's how I ended up moving beyond organics. I worked for them for 4 years. And the cool part about that, I started right out of college, organics pretty much. So I hadn't worked for any of these large companies.
Yeah.
And I 4 years working with them telling me no a lot.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't understand this. Like, what do you mean?
What do you mean no? Exactly. Where's the
Yeah.
blue sky thinking here?
And I'm like, seriously? Like, I seriously can't do that? You're wrong, right?
Exactly.
You can't
So-
do that.
Started diving again. I mean, I'm an employee. What do you do as an employee? Oh my God, you work like 40, 45 hours a week.
Instead of 80, right?
I had all this time in my world. I'm like, what do you do with your free time if you're an entrepreneur? So I started scuba diving again. And I was a diver as a kid. I learned how to swim before I could walk. I mean, I'm a water baby through and through.
Sure.
Diving again. So there I am in Palau now, which is, further than Guam. It was really far away. It was
Yeah.
beautiful and clean and gorgeous. And I'm diving and I'm coming up and I see this rainbow. I'm like, oh, how beautiful. And I get closer. I'm like, wait, that's a rainbow coming off a group of snorkelers. So that's not good.
Right.
And it was literally an oil slick.
slick.
Sunscreen was just coming off their bodies.
Yeah.
Beautiful, pristine, clear water. And that was kind of the aha moment where I was thinking about the products that I had been making for the last 15 years at that point, how it might impact not just us, but our environment as well. And that's really what got me rolling on that side of it.
Yeah. So now
That's-
you have a beautiful, beautiful line of sunscreen and body care and shampoo and hair conditioner, all
Right.
based on the fact of what you saw going on dive boats and people using it and then realizing this is not good for the reef.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I have the great good fortune of living very close to Crane Beach here in Massachusetts, which is a environmentally protected beach. And there's scientists out there all the time. And in the summertime, it's pretty crowded. It's absolutely gorgeous, really beautiful. And at the same time, there's all these, like, you can't walk here and you can't do this, and the dogs and the horses can't come on the beach in the summer, and you got to clean up everything afterwards, right? But nobody talks about the sunscreen that people put on their body. And you can see it in the summertime. You can see it along the shoreline coming up. It's like foamy and oily. And sometimes my mind just stops and I think, we do so many things, and yet we don't go this next step, which I think is what you're doing. And it's tremendous, and we need to go this next step. So tell us a little bit more about some of these chemistries, Autumn. I think people need this education. They don't know about this.
You know, Nancy, I didn't either. I had been formulating natural skincare for 15 years. I had been making things that were organic compliant and Whole Foods compliant and safe for us. But I never thought about how these ingredients might possibly impact the waters. And I remember back in the late 90s, I was sitting there with a group of other CEOs and brand managers, and we were talking about animal testing standards. And I was one of the original signers of the campaign for Safe Cosmetics. I know how to make something that's not going to burn our eyes. I know how to make something that's not going to hurt a baby's skin. But how do I make something that's not going to hurt fish or coral? I had no idea. I assumed. But you know what they say about assuming, right?
Right.
Exactly. Something about you and me, right?
There was no array of use. I mean, there's no testing standards. We really didn't know. So I came back from that and I'm like, I'm going to make, and I had already come up with the name Stream to Sea because all streams lead to the sea. I don't care if you're in the middle of the country or if you're on the beach. We need to be thinking of water sources, right?
Yep.
So reefs, we weren't talking about sunscreen. The studies weren't out yet when I founded Stream to Sea. But I knew it was important. You know, an endocrine system, if you talk to the ecotoxicologists, the reason why the sunscreens hurt the coral are the same reasons why they would hurt us. They're endocrine disruptors. I mean, these ingredients, the ecotoxicologist will tell you that an endocrine disruptor will hurt a mouse, similar or affect a mouse, the same way that it'll affect a human, the same way that it'll affect a fish, the same way that it'll affect a coral. I mean, it's in a really simplistic terms, but it messes with our hormones and our growth cycle.
Yeah.
So if it hurts them, it's going to hurt that side of it too. But how about the rest of the products, the formulations, the pH, the foaming, the surfactants, right? So the first formula that I made was a shampoo. Now I'm on this dive boat, and on the back of the boat, we're all washing off, and those suds are running right overboard. And I grab this fruity, smelly, bubbly product that's blue, and I'm reading the ingredients. I'm like, crap.
Right. That ain't it. Right.
No skull and crossbones before each one of the ingredients. Like,
you know, shampoo's hard, right? I mean, making a body lotion that's organic and natural and pure is great, but how many organic and natural consumers do you know that'll buy beautiful produce and they'll buy beautiful supplements, but they still get their hair care product with formaldehyde in it at the salon?
Exactly.
So shampoos are hard. So the first formula that I made, it would pass all the natural standards, and it actually performed brilliantly. Like, I'm kind of proud of this one. All of my health food people are going to eat it up. And I made the decision to send it off for ecotox testing. And that was another lack of sleep moment. I had a hard time making that decision, but I didn't know. I mean, how do you know? How's it going to affect fish?
Right.
So I sent it to the ecotox lab for the aquatic safety testing, and I killed every fish in the tank. It was 100% mortality. I had the same response, Nancy. I cried. I'm like, no. I cried because I killed the fish. And I also cried because what if I hadn't done it? What if I had said, I don't believe in the animal testing, because I don't believe in animal testing, but here I am doing it. So what if I hadn't, and I had come here, I'm looking you in the eye and I'm saying, my products are reef safe because they're safe for us. And I didn't know. What if I had sold like thousands and thousands of kilos of this stuff to people that are bathing in the rivers and on the back of the boats and killing fish?
And trying their best to do what they think is good for Mother Nature, but not knowing.
And listening to their doctor about protecting their skin, right? It's, I mean, we know that so we have to protect our skin from skin cancer, absolutely. But we have to find that razor's edge balance between our world and ourselves. And I think that's what you've done.
Love and a work in progress, and we're always trying to do better. There's always things like we just changed our packaging on our lip balms. We're able to make them out of recycled milk jugs, right? It's one of those where everything that you can do better, you should. You cannot be stagnant. New ingredients come out all the time. Today, raw material suppliers are putting ecotox information in their marketing brochures.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
That's great.
They're not doing that even fine.
Yeah, finally, right? Yeah, exactly.
And it's
so my kind of my faves of yours are definitely the sunscreens, because that is a tricky place, you know. I'm shampoo, great, love shampoo, love lip balm, but
Yeah.
the sunscreens are where you really went somewhere. And there's a million sunscreens on the market, but I really want you to explain what it is that you do differently and why it's so important for people to make this switch. This is a big thing for me because as much as I love, just I always say, wear a hat and clothes. Stop putting that crap on your body. I can be really like that. But you can't. If you want to take a walk on the beach and it's 90 degrees, yeah, you have to figure out something else to do for your skin, So,
Well, and being the old guy in the three of us here, the the ancient mariner here, I grew up around the beach. I grew up around the ocean. My best friend's dad had a beautiful boat that we used to go out on to Catalina, and I can remember how much of a change I saw over 50 years in the quality of the beach and the quality of the fish that you saw around the beach, and it's like autumn. I know when you go out on a dive boat, you go to these beautiful exotic locations where the water is absolutely pristine. And those are the locations that you really, it's like, wow, we got to protect what we've got left because,
true.
you know, the tourism industry is huge and
Hmm.
people are going and they're going to want to do. And you've got all of these divers and they see how beautiful it is. They want to protect it. So tell us,
Absolutely.
what do you got going there?
Well, on you're absolutely 100% right. It's one of the questions I get. They're like, "Really, my sunscreen going to make a difference?" I had somebody tell me the solution to pollution was dilution.
Yeah, just don't use as much.
Right, I don't like you anymore. So does my personal choice make a difference? We can talk about the human side of it. The fact that you put chemical based sunscreen on your skin and within 30 minutes it's detected in your urine. We can talk about the fact that the FDA tried to designed a test in 2019, a trial to determine the safety, the maximum usage level that was safe, and they stopped the trial after 1 day. It was supposed to be a 7-day trial. After 1 days of application, it exceeded the amount that they thought was safe. You can go on that side, but just from the ecotox side of it, 1 drop of oxybenzone was enough in 6 Olympic-sized swimming pools was enough to kill coral larvae. So if
One
the
drop,
baby
one
one
drop.
1 drop. So does your application matter? Yes, it does. And the other side of it is people will tell us all the time that they only use a reef-safe product when they're snorkeling or diving or swimming in the reef. They're like, I'm a good person. I only do that. I'm like, did you know that the wastewater treatment facilities don't filter out those ingredients? And they bioaccumulate. So you put it on your skin, and even if you're not washing it off, it's in your urine. You're going to flush it down the drain one way or another. And the wastewater treatment facilities have no ability to filter these out, so they are getting into our waters. The best course of action is just don't use them. They're not good for you. They're not good for the planet.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So you do the mineral grains. You cannot trust what's on the front of a label anymore. You flip it over. You have to read those ingredients.
Mhm.
And looking at the active ingredients to start with, you want zinc or titanium only. And then you need to go a step further. You need to make sure that they're non-nano. The big deception, in my opinion, is the clear side of it. There's a lot of none of us want to look like the zinc blue, like
The abominable snowman.
right.
Right.
Uh,
That's
you're
my idea of a tan, white.
right. No, so we want to look good when we're doing it. You have to learn how to apply a mineral sunscreen different because it's not the same as the what we may have grown up with. The minerals are basically chalk in a lotion. So when you put it on your skin, if you put a whole bunch of it right here, guess where it's going to stay?
Yeah.
Right there.
Right? So you just do like a large pea size amount, put it on your face.
Right.
A large amount, put it on your arms. It takes a couple more minutes. And like you said, wear rash guards, wear sunglasses, wear hats, but do apply sunscreen to your
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so one last thing, because we're really proud of you for this. We know you're an avid diver, and both Tom and I are absolute water babies too. I did in my younger years. I did triathlons and swam a lot in oceans around Massachusetts, and we just absolutely love our oceans. Um, you were honored recently by being named to a very elite group. So just share with everyone, and we're so proud of you. I mean, all the things that you've done in your life, everything that's added up to now, but you get this really special honor because much of stream to sea is found in dive shops. And we're hoping it's going to be found in a lot of other places as time goes on and people start to understand their impact on the ocean and the water, not just the ocean, but the water. Just like you say, what you flush down your toilet doesn't necessarily get filtered out and neutralized. And that's very, very true. And that includes what you put in your body too. So, so what is that special honor? Share with our listeners, if you will.
So I have a group of heroes that I have basically grown up admiring these women, and it's the Women Divers Hall of Fame.
Right.
And if you are a water baby, an ocean lover, and you're a diver, you know these women, you admire them. They are absolutely my heroes. And this year I was honored to be invited to join them.
Congratulations. You deserve so much honor. It's very exciting. So
I am beyond thrilled and beyond honored. And I tear up thinking about it. Yeah. Ladies really are my heroes, and now I get to call them my sisters.
It's tremendous.
And it all started with a little puppy who was
Mr. Jenkins. He's on the wall over there. I show you.
I know.
Right there.
Tremendous. Well, Autumn,
you know
thank
what,
you.
Autumn, that speaks to the size of your heart, and it speaks to the commitment that you have to the planet.
True.
That is, so we want to wish you all the best in the world. And it's really nice to know that you're bringing out the message that when people put sunscreen on, even though they don't know it, they're also putting it where the sun don't shine, because it's literally coming out that end later on. So thank you so much, Autumn.
Thank you so much
for being on the show. I'm so thrilled. I love you so much. You're such a good friend and such a beautiful soul. So
and again, I'm so grateful that we're in the same village together. And thank you for having me here. It's an absolute honor.
It's a very fun village, isn't it?
We do love our village. Go and have a really tremendous day, and we will spread the word. And I hope things keep growing. Bye.
Yeah, and don't forget, as we tell everybody, wait for the confetti.
Wait for the confetti up in the right. There's a little cloud in the upper right-hand corner. When you press leave, just wait for the confetti, and then you can shut down your link. Thank you so much.
All right, now,
Thank
Autumn.
you.
Blessings, Autumn.
Have a beautiful
a big virtual hug until I get a chance to give you the real thing. Love you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Well, I think that was wonderful.
Oh my God,
she's absolutely fabulous.
She's an absolute gem, isn't she? Yeah, we are so lucky to have her and to have her on. Now
Guess what?
is our favorite things. Our favorite things. All right. So this episode number 4, I'm going to talk about quercetin. Quercetin is another of my favorite things. Quercetin was first discovered in 1937 by Hungarian biochemist Albert Szent-Györgyi. He won a Nobel Prize for his research on bioflavonoids and on vitamin C. He's most notably known for discovering ascorbic acid. But we're just going to talk about quercetin today. Quercetin is a plant flavanol. Okay, it's a kind of polyphenol. And it's found in many fruits and vegetables, leaves, seeds, grains. It has a very bitter flavor. So if you were to purchase quercetin and open up the capsule and put it on your tongue, it would be incredibly bitter and cold. Capers have the highest dietary amount of quercetin at 234 milligrams per gram, with buckwheat, radish, and cilantro coming in far after that. And a lot of people talk about onions and how onions are touted to contain quercetin. They do, but they only have 32 milligrams per gram of this very special flavonoid. So if you're really looking for a food source, put capers on things, right? Capers are very salty and have a little bitter quality to them. They're delicious, though, and instead of using sea salt, you can use capers. and for that kind of salty umami taste, and they're very rich in quercetin. In 2010, the FDA acknowledged very high purity quercetin as GRAS, generally recognized as safe for use as an ingredient in various specified food categories, with levels up to, but not exceeding, 500 milligrams per serving. So that's kind of our benchmark, if you will. Quercetin has been found in animal studies to stabilize mast cells during a histamine reaction, thus gaining a reputation as a nutraceutical that's beneficial for those who have mild springtime environmental reactions. So keep that in mind. It's what I often use it for in my practice, is kind of a first line of defense for kind of mild, kind of a mild springtime effect. Okay. As a flavonoid, it's very synergistic with vitamin C because it's part of the vitamin C molecule, and it may have beneficial effect on these cells in these tissue called endothelial cells. And endothelial cells are very ripe in the cardiovascular system. And I want to share an interesting preliminary human clinical trial with all of you. We do need more gold standard research on quercetin, even though it's a flavonoid, part of food. And so some of us who are in the world that Tom and I are in, the natural products industry and the herb and food world, we kind of take it as, oh yeah, well, it's been in food forever and it's been in herbs forever, so what's the beef? But it's really good to have backup clinical trials. And there are preliminary animal studies on quercetin, but we need more gold standard clinical trials on quercetin. But I want to share this one. It's excellent. It was published in Nutrition, Metabolism, and Cardiovascular Disease, May 2013. And the title is Effective Quercetin on Traits of the Metabolic Syndrome, Endothelial Function, and Inflammation in Men with Different APOE Isoforms. So the background was to look at a polyphenol quercetin and if it may possibly prevent cardiovascular disease due to its vasorelaxant and antioxidant properties. So it has the capacity to possibly relax constriction of the vessels in the cardiovascular system. So the researchers investigated the effect of quercetin on risk factors of atherosclerosis, biomarkers of inflammation, and oxidative stress, depending on apolipoprotein E, or APOE genotype. So if you remember back to our first episode when we were talking with Gordon Enns about inflammation and how it affects everything, we're talking about quercetin, just quercetin from food, if you will, having an effect on this very important inflammatory marker. So this is a double-blind, crossed-over study of 49 healthy male subjects with an APOE genotype, okay, that indicates possibility of cardiovascular disease, okay? They consumed 150 milligrams a day of quercetin or a placebo for 8 weeks each. So they had a washout phase. They looked at endothelial function, anthropometry. They looked at metabolic and inflammatory markers. They measured fasting and postprandial state following a standardized lipid-rich meal. So they really looked at how the endothelial system is working with different stressors and effects. Okay, they looked at triglycerol concentrations, and postprandial triglycerol concentrations were significantly decreased, and HDL cholesterol concentrations increased, which after quercetin as compared to placebo consumption. So quercetin moderately increased levels of tumor necrosis factor A. There was a significant gene-diet interaction for waist circumference and for body mass index. So the conclusions were quercetin supplementation improved some risk factors of cardiovascular disease. It exerted slightly pro-inflammatory effects in other aspects. So genotype-dependent effects were seen only on waist circumference and BMI. So there's this effect that quercetin has of this kind of trying to create homeostasis and balance. Again, we need a lot more studies, but yes, a little goes a long way with quercetin. Short-term use for springtime effects, longer time use under the support of a qualified nutritionist, a chiropractor, a clinical herbalist, a naturopath, those kinds of uses of quercetin. So again, we definitely have a homeostatic effect here. We definitely have a powerful effect for just 150 milligrams of quercetin per day. Very interesting. A lot more to talk about in the future, I hope. But I love quercetin, and it's a part of something that I use in my practice with a lot of safety.
And, Nan, I think, it bears in mind to mention the fact that, quercetin is a molecule that's a little bit difficult for the body to assimilate. It's not like readily available to the body. So it's nice to find some of the newer forms of quercetin. There's one out there called bioquercetin that is actually optimized so that people can, I know, again, going back to the company that you and I used to work for, we had a product called activated quercetin.
Right.
And it was,
and have bromelain with it.
Mhm.
And
Some
yeah,
of the
and that's,
bioflavonoids with it to help pick it up.
yeah, and also just stabilize it a little bit. So, and now there's dihydroquercetin, which I really like. We're starting to see early research on dihydroquercetin as being very stable, very effective, and doesn't have that secondary pro-inflammatory response. Again, you have to remember that in everything in the body, sometimes a little good inflammation is good if it's in the right place.
Right.
But you want to make sure that you're always in balance. And quercetin, taken out of the context of all the flavonoids or vitamin C and other kinds of delivery systems, again, it's going to act more like a drug than if it's going to be found in food like capers or found in a complex where it's directed and stabilized. So in the natural products industry, we often will use bromelain, which has its own kind of inflammatory modulating effects, if you will. And also in the context of dihydro, quercetin it has a molecule effect. It's not just kind of isolated out of the context of a whole. It's put back into a complex, and it's much more stable and has a greater effect in the end. So the forms of quercetin are as important as just quercetin itself. So keep your eye out for that. Talk to your clinical herbalist, talk to your naturopath, talk to your chiropractor, talk to professionals who've been studying these molecules. You were going to say something, Tom. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was going to say basically there's also some research now coming out from certain sectors talking about how quercetin can work on what's called senescence in the cells within the body. Our cells eventually they all have to die. They get replaced and they die. But some of them don't completely die. They just get really old and geriatric, and they're walking around with their walkers through the body, and they're not doing anything. They're actually bringing the whole energetics of the body down. And being able to clear out some of those senescent cells is really important for maintaining youthfulness, if you will, as we age. So that's another one of the things I am totally with Nan on this. I really love quercetin, and it was even found to be one of those things that was being investigated during this whole pandemic as what can we use that will help the body do what it
there was a lot of investigation, and there's a lot more that we'll see soon, I think, because it became a darling of our past year and a half. I think a lot more research, we'll start to see more research come out in the next 4 to 6 months. So I can't wait. I kind of have my eyes looking, and my finger on the pulse on that. But I really like quercetin. It's grass, generally recognized as safe at under 500 milligrams per day. Suggested serving can be anywhere from 100 to 500, but I usually like it around 125, 150 divided throughout the day. And it's best to take in a complex like we do with bromelain and or as dihydroquercetin. So
Very cool.
So
Well, there is Nan's favorite thing for this day, and I think that's great, especially when I hear from Nan that she's using it in her practice and that she's having really great results with it, that she's seeing results with it, not just, people say, well, I think maybe it's working, but no, when you actually, if you're a practitioner and you see results, it's something else. So that's kudos, Nan. I think that's a great one to have talked about today. I want to talk about one of my favorite things, and it's kind of an interesting deal because it's got this. Sometimes you can have a love-hate relationship with herbs. This is an herb called nettles, and for the most part, people look at nettles as a weed, and many herbs are weeds. They are things that you would find. They're so. One of the beautiful things about herbs is the fact that some of them being weeds, they're very strong plants. They're survivors. They will. They're look at the whole chemical industry trying to come up with ways to kill weeds because, oh my God, they'll survive anything. So nettles is sometimes, the Latin binomial is Urtica dioica, which is, the urtica has a connotation to it because we have this word in our language called urtication. And so what is urtication? Well, urtication goes all the way around what nettles is all about. When you look at the nettles plant, when you go out to look at it, it's got all these little tiny hairs all over the plant. And each one of those little hairs, believe it or not, is like a little tiny hypodermic needle. And those little hypodermic needles, they have a little crystalline structure right at the very right at the very point of that little hair. And when it breaks, when you brush against it, it breaks and it sticks into you and then breaks, and it's actually like a little hypodermic needle. And it actually injects into your body a compound that the plant makes. And it's a compound called formic acid. Now, formic acid is interesting because it's the same chemical you're going to find in an ant bite. So when an ant bites you and it puffs up, it's part of the fact that it's formic acid. And the formic acid is causing the sting. Well, it's also in amongst that, there's some histamine and there's some other compounds in that little nettles sting that cause you to raise welts and everything. And so what does urtication mean? Well, urtication, what people found out thousands of years ago was, when you brush against this plant, it really stings. It's terrible. It's like itches and stings and burns. But if you have muscular pain or joint pain, somehow what the plant is releasing into your body with that stinging makes that pain go away. And people notice this, that, wow, I can flail myself with this plant, literally, and
Not really.
or have somebody else do it, like if
Right.
it's my low back, go ahead, beat me with this plant. This is like broccoli getting even with it.
Broccoli, I was going to say.
So basically, people have been using this plant for thousands of years to help with joint pain. Now, it's not a pleasant experience, but people really get used to it. And, you would say, well, okay, well, how would that, why would that be one of your favorite herbs, Tom? I mean, how often do you need to beat yourself up with nettles? Well, some of my experiences with nettles have been around collecting it in the early spring when it's really nice and young and tender. And of course, you go out with gloves because you will get stung. But the interesting part about the nettles is about an hour, maybe 2 hours after you pick it, it's lost its ability to sting you. You could rub it all over your skin and barely have any stings at all. So then it becomes very easy to handle. It's delicious. It's been used historically to replace spinach. I mean, people use it instead of spinach. We used to go out. I had friends in Oregon that we would go out and pick spring nettles and make nettle lasagna. And just absolutely, instead of spinach lasagna, the nettle lasagna. And it's very nutritive. It's the reason I love nettles is because it is so nutritive. You can get up to almost 100% of your daily requirement of vitamin A, even in the beta carotene and the other form as well, from nettles. You've got calcium, a very high amount of calcium in nettles. You've got iron. You've got multiple minerals and lots of essential amino acids in the nettles. So it's what we would call a survival herb. It's one of those herbs that, if you were out and ran out of food and you needed to take care of yourself, it has a high level of protein as well. So you can literally feed yourself with the nettles plant and help yourself survive.
And get by, for sure. Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And, the thing is with, it's been used for thousands of years. There's clinical trials on it that have been done for a wide range of things. There's a lot of promise for breast cancer and for prostate cancer. This, obviously studies are ongoing, but they are showing that nettles could literally be something that would be very effective in as an adjunct therapy in cancer treatment. They've also found that even nettles tea can be used and has very beneficial effects on treating leukemia. So again, these are all clinical studies. This is not like a guarantee. We're not making a claim that nettles is going to cure anything, but there's a lot of great studies that go on.
So Tom, my understanding is that the more fresh the nettle leaves are, and the nettle, a part of the nettle plant that has a lot of more active, medicinally active constituents, and that that has to be handled in a certain way. I understand that if you really want nettles to work, you need like a freeze-dried product. If you're buying it as an herb of commerce, that freeze-dried product is really the way to go, because you want to capture these compounds that are quite volatile, actually, and they can dissipate after a period of time. So handling the plant, eating it fresh, but how do you do that if you don't have it growing in your yard, or you don't know
Right.
what it looks like and you don't know how to harvest it and you haven't been trained? You're probably going to go to your health food store, or you're going to look for it. And my understanding is that those freeze-dried nettle products are a little bit more effective. Is that true? Do you find that to be true?
That's absolutely
Yeah.
true. You want to, excuse me, you want to be able to preserve all of those compounds as quickly as possible. And with any leafy plant, you can find that a lot of the compounds will dissipate fairly quickly. Freeze drying it also helps to preserve the protein aspect of it. It helps to preserve some of the mineral and the amino acid content in the leaf itself. And what I really like about talking about herbs and talking to people about herbs is there are some wonderful places to go and do your own research. There's
Yeah.
a lot of blog sites and podcasts like this where people will say all kinds of things about a plant or about a nutrient, like Nancy was talking about. And they may or they may not have done their research. They may be just going on conjecture on something that they've heard. And in some future episodes, we'll kind of talk about that because it's a whole subject matter. But there are some beautiful websites like PubMed, PUBMED.gov.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful peer-reviewed. So when you do a peer review, other experts in that field are looking at your study to make sure that you did it right, to make sure that you came to the right conclusion, you dotted all your T's, you dotted all your I's rather than crossed all your T's. And so you've got PubMed.gov or you've got Scholar.google.com, which is another wonderful, wonderful place to go. So I'm encouraging you, excuse me, I'm encouraging you to go out and do your own research. Look at things. It's like, look at Autumn, our guest today,
Amazing, right?
who thought she had it right and decided, okay, I'm going to put it to the test. I'm going to send it off to this study place and have them put it in a fish tank. And she killed all the fish, and I know how bad she feels because I know how beautiful her heart is. But without asking yourself, without saying, wow, what do we know about this? What have we
Right.
studied about this?
Right.
And a lot of studies will validate traditional uses.
And clinic people who are clinicians who have been seeing people in a clinical setting for long periods of time, they also have a lot of information about it. How things work, how things don't work. Sometimes there isn't money for research on something that's been traditionally used, but clinicians will find safety and efficacy from practice. So sometimes a mix of the two is really how you get great information on nutraceuticals and herbs. And it is true. I love the scientific research, but sometimes there's holes in the research, or it just isn't there because no one had the money to do it. So, but I always go there and double check. And I think the other piece, and Tom, I'm so glad you brought this up. I think the other piece that's really important to talk about is herb-drug interactions. So, even in the case of nettle or quercetin, if you are on a pharmaceutical, you have to talk to your doctor. You have to be careful, or you have to see somebody who really knows drug herb and drug nutraceutical interaction. That's very important to consider before you just go taking something. And even if it looks like it's generally recognized as safe, or it's an herb that's been used for thousands of years safely. 500 years ago, we didn't have pharmaceuticals in the mix. So you have to take that into consideration.
And sometimes it is true, like Autumn was saying, even though she was saying it in a different context. The solution is in the dilution. If you take too much, even a wonderfully beneficial herb, if you take too much, can be really,
Absolutely.
really difficult on your body. So just to, cap it off with that. Stinging nettles is a wonderfully nutritive herb. It's a absolutely
Love
delicious,
it.
can replace spinach. But do your homework and
Yeah.
make sure that you know what you're doing. And beyond that, it's like Nancy pointed out, there are some really talented practitioners who are writing and speaking and have their wonderful websites. Make sure that you check out with them, see what they're saying, see what their experience is. And that way you can be as safe as you possibly can. And then let your body talk to you. I don't like to tell people, use this dosage or that dosage necessarily, because you live in your body. You absolutely live in your body, and you need to pay attention to the house that you're living in. So when you add something to your diet or when you add something to your supplement regimen, pay attention to what your body's telling you, because it may tell you, ooh, I don't like that. Or, I kind of like that. Let's try a little bit more. So that's the way, for me, that's the way I like to do it, is I like to let my body tell me what to do next, and I'll take it slowly. So anyway, I want to just say that, one of the reasons that I love nettles is because something that can put a sting on you can also put a sting on so many different conditions in your body. Kind of
That's a
like
nice
that
way to
idea.
remember it. That's a great way to remember it. Okay, so that is it for our episode number 4 today.
Now
We
you
want to
might,
thank you all.
one last thing though. People
Oh,
might
okay.
be forgetting
All right.
that this might be the first episode they tune into, and they might
Well,
say,
that's true.
who are these
Who
guys?
are these nuts?
They're kind of weird, I'm not sure so I just want to do a brief intro for Nancy. Nancy has been part of the natural products industry now for over 30 years. She's been an educator for some of the biggest companies in the industry. She is a profoundly well versed, as you can tell from the way she talks about research and from the shelves behind her with all of her books. And that's not just for shelf education. She's actually read all of those books. Basically, Nancy is a practitioner. She is an alternative herbal practitioner, and she does all kinds of different alternative and energy medicines in her clinic outside of Boston. And she has been doing clinical work now for well over 30 years, I think. Right, Nan?
Yeah, 30.
Absolutely. And as she tackles really difficult conditions that most people have no luck working with. So when Nancy tells me something, I pay attention to it because I know the results that she gets. So yeah, she's a clinical herbalist, clinical alternative healthcare practitioner. And she's a member of the registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild, which I think is just a wonderful way to look at herbalists and say, wow, okay, you've been reviewed. You've been reviewed by a group of your peers and and they all say, hey, you know what you're doing. Good on you.
Thanks.
So
And
that's
Tom's herbal background goes all the way back to 1970 when I was 5 years old in Hawaii, where he was an organic farmer. And he worked with local doctors making healing fresh organic juices for those doctors' patients. He was integral in a lot of these people that had intractable illnesses. He was integral in making sure that they had organic and fresh uh, juices that were combined to the specification of the physicians. And since then, in the past 30 years, he's worked for 2 very large and very well-known, very reputable companies in the natural products industry as their herbal educator and trainer. He is probably one of the most engaging speakers I've seen in the education circuit. And now that we're starting to do this online mystery thing, now he'll be here for all of you who like the online experience. So, I just want to say that we're doing this podcast twice a month. We're going to try and interview key people. We will be doing subject matters such as tick-borne illnesses, hyperbaric oxygen. It's like this wild scope of information that we want to share with you as we're going forward. Yes, we'll always have our favorite things. Yes, we'll definitely talk about naturals in the news, but we're definitely going to bring a lot, very broad scope of alternative and natural healing to you for information and for fun and exploration. If you don't mind, please like our Facebook page and subscribe. If you like us and you want to share us with your friends who are interested in this incredible world of natural health and healing and the natural products industry, please share with friends and family.
Absolutely.
Let us know if there's something you want to hear about too.
Oh yeah. If you've got a burning question, if you like, well, what about this? What do you guys know about this? We'll tackle it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and with that, we'll say we're gonna.
No, I got to ask you one more thing.
What?
I know. It's like doctors nowadays. They do have it rough. I know. You're an alternative care practitioner, but doctors have it rough. Did you hear about the guy the other day? He's an audiologist, and he's talking to his patient, and he was just trying to explain to his patient, you just got to stop using Q-tips. I feel so sorry for the guy. That information went in one ear and out the other.
Okay. And there you have it, folks. Thanks so much for joining us.
I think that's called a dad joke now.
That's a dad joke for sure. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks,
and we hope
everybody.
to see you in a couple
next
more
time.
minutes. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, everyone. Until next time, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom.
We'll have more great topics and guests in the very near future. So join us right here in 2 weeks as the Supplement Super Sleuth
And the Herbal Storyteller take another deep dive into the fascinating world of the natural products industry.
See you later.